Hello, my soccer universe. My name is Roland and this is Football Talk. Austria did it! Back at the World Cup. So happy on a monumental day for Austrian soccer because not only did Austria qualify for the first time since '98, like another nation that I was really happy about doing so, but also at the Under-17 World Cup, Austria beat in the round of 16 England 4-0. That is a result that still boggles the mind, at least my mind, because that is something I never saw coming. Many things that happened over the past 3 days I did not see coming. I mean, all three match days had quite some surprising results. Only Monday kind of tailed off a little bit because it was also one-sided, but that was also something I did not see coming. It started with drama in Budapest, it ended with drama in Glasgow and Vienna to a certain degree. I shouldn't even mention it, but Concacaf, the final round, 2 surprise qualifiers in there. I mean, crazy stuff. And I'm not even mentioning what happened in Africa and Asia. I'll wait. You have to watch this in the video. As I did it the last time around, after every match day, I quickly recorded my thoughts on what I saw. And I just let this roll from now on. So let's go through Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then we'll talk a little bit towards the end. I gotta be honest, Sunday was probably one of the most remarkable World Cup qualifying match days in recent memory, but that might not mean all that much because always the last match day might be exciting. But we had probably one of the best qualifying matches ever already in the early kickoff between Hungary and Ireland. What a match that was! It was ebbing and flowing, and throughout the game, up until the last few minutes, you thought that Hungary overall have the upper hand, but this Ireland side are not out of it. Hungary took a very early lead, then there was a penalty that was given away by Hungary. And yes, it was one of those VAR penalties because the referee actually waved playing on. But Parrott actually converts that one. It's 1-1. And then Hungary again get a little bit the upper hand. And Varga scores a beautiful goal just before halftime to give Hungary the 2-1 lead. Remember, this is a Hungary side that haven't been at the World Cup in 1986. Can I also just mention, I know it's not the nicest people in the stands, but the atmosphere at the Puskás Arena was absolutely amazing. It was absolutely amazing. It was cooking the whole thing, and it added to this atmosphere. And Hungary did everything to kind of keep the game under control, but you could also feel this nervousness around them. They're about to achieve something historic, to stay in contention for a World Cup qualifying spot. Yes, they cannot catch, or they could catch potentially Portugal, but at that time it was already known. We'll talk about Portugal in a second. Portugal are more or less through to the World Cup already, and everyone would have expected that. It was also the weird situation that ahead of that match, Hungary had the option to actually qualify directly. If things are really falling their way, go into the playoffs with a win or a draw over Ireland, that would be at least guaranteed. Or, in the worst case, lose to Ireland and you're completely out of World Cup contention. So, everything was possible. And it was a little bit of the roller coaster ride, except that you never, maybe just for the first few minutes where you had the lead, you never really were in contention for the direct qualifying spot. For that, you would have needed to get a better result against Portugal. While I was watching the game, while I saw that Ireland is fighting, I could also feel that Hungary is overall in control, but cannot quite get it over the line. And then suddenly there's a ball that goes in, goes to Parrott, great first touch, puts it dead, and then has some time to actually dink the goalkeeper. And it's 2-2. And suddenly the Hungarian team was nervous as hell. And from that moment on, only Ireland were playing, and you thought that Hungary, and I even liked their new jerseys, although they are rather simple, with the thick stripes for Hungary, and then, the 125-year crest, that actually looked mighty fine, I gotta say. But that's beside the point. But for that moment, they are just defending, they're dropping low, and it is Ireland who throw everything but the kitchen sink at them. And you thought that Hungary is seeing that out. They have a last clearance. It's 5 minutes left to play. It is out. And then ball comes to Quimmy Kelleher, who at midfield plays an absolute beautiful pass. This was not hoofing it upfield. You can see he wanted to play it right there. It lands at the head of an Irish who just puts it into the path of Troy Parrott, who stretches everything and stumps it like that into the net to give Ireland an absolute famous victory and completes an absolutely incredible week for him after scoring already a brace against Portugal to give Ireland the win over Portugal, but now a hat-trick against Hungary. And Ireland, who were more or less out of qualifying, are suddenly in the playoff. And you know, we have a saying that the ones that you call dead live longer. And I think this is very much true for this Ireland team. I think nobody in the playoffs, after this international break that Ireland had, no one really would want to play the Irish. Because you always get one thing for certain: fighting spirit. And that's what the Irish showed. In the meantime, in Portugal, in absolutely stunning black jerseys in honor of the big legend Eusebio, took on Armenia. And yes, there was at one point a 1-1 scoreline. Nah, it was never 9-1. 9-1. With two hat-tricks by Joao Neves and Bruno Fernandes. Bruno Fernandes was two penalties as well. Gonçalo Ramos actually gave Portugal the lead again, and then it was just one-way traffic. So Portugal through to the World Cup, Ireland in playoffs, Hungary out. And that was actually quite the excitement already in the early window. Then, at the 6 o'clock window, it was for me all about Ukraine against Iceland. A very, very tense affair. We knew that Ukraine need the win over Iceland, but Iceland seemed like they are really holding on to that one. And Ukraine cannot really crack them down. But in the end, it's two late goals by Ukraine, namely by Zubkov and by Gutsuliak then in garbage time, that sent Ukraine into the playoff behind France, who actually got an easy win in Azerbaijan with a B-string team without Kylian Mbappe, because he has been sent home to Madrid with an injury that even Madrid said, nah, this is not an injury. This is an, like I heard the name, Azerbaijan ankle, and I think that really says it all. We had England winning 2-0 in Albania. Not much to talk about. Everyone wants to talk about Jude Bellingham and him throwing a hissy fit, whereas Serbia at least end qualifying with a 2-1 home win over Latvia, just saving them the embarrassment. They're only 1 point behind Albania, so it was that close. If you get a point, you might have done that. And then before we got to the big finale in the group with Italy and Norway, that never was gonna happen, we had the treat of Nigeria against the DRC for the African spot in the Intercontinental playoff. What a remarkable game that was. Nigeria took an early lead through Frankie Onyeka in the 3rd minute, making it 1-0 for Nigeria, and everything was pointing towards the way of the Super Eagles. However, they played with the big three up front, that is Lookman, Chukwueze, and of course Victor Osimhen, but you could see it's not quite working out up front. They cannot find each other. And there was one situation where I really thought, the Super Eagles are in trouble. There was in the 24th minute a cross in. It was not going to Osimhen, but there were Lookman and Chukwueze waiting right there and obstructing each other instead of one letting the other take the shot. And so the chance never got off, and this would have been a surefire 2-0, and the thing is done and dusted. And just 6 minutes later, it is a cross in that is slightly flagged into the path of Elia, and it's 1-1. And the nerves were high for Nigeria. And then add to that, Victor Osimhen had to come off with a hamstring at half-time. And from that moment on, Nigeria didn't look right again. And then even more crazy, the other two stars, Lookman Chukwueze, came off in the 57th minute. I mean, all the star power was suddenly gone, and there was only one team playing, and that was the DRC. And the DRC actually dominated and probably should have won this one in regulation. The chances were definitely there, even in overtime. This was such a empty performance by Nigeria. However, they make it into the penalty shootout, and I thought, at least they have now a chance to maybe get this done. And while I really would love, or I really would not have minded the DRC to go through, I have to say just the star power for Nigeria up front is something that I think I would have liked to see at the World Cup. I gotta be honest about that. But still, the DRC, once the game concluded and went to penalties, I thought, this is a big chance missed by DRC. Nigeria must be feeling good. However, DRC brought on Fayulu, their reserve goalkeeper, who is also the reserve goalkeeper for Noah in Armenia. So this guy doesn't play very often. However, he was seemingly the guy that they thought could do something in the penalty shootout. And I don't know what he has done between the final whistle and the penalty shootout, the Nigerian coach had to claim he performed all kind of voodoo there. And, from a European perspective, this is ridiculous. Of course, from an African perspective, you have to take this really, really serious, because voodoo is a thing right there. And the voodoo may have been performed because Calvin Bassey, Nigeria started, puts it right over the bar. But the next two also miss. So after 3 penalties, it's still 0-0, and then Sadiki converts the first one for the DRC, and Adams does it so for Nigeria before Tuanzebe also sees his effort save. And I have to say, the 3 saves, the first by Bassey was a clear miss, but the other 3 were really badly taken penalties that were easy saves for the goalkeepers. Of course, then, the next 4 are all in, and there was some really crazy scenes, especially the penalty by Ejuke, the 5th one, where suddenly bottles got thrown, and we were in front of Nigeria, and where are these bottles with water, full with water, thrown in there? And it was ahead of the penalty by Adams, and it was ahead of the penalty by Ejuke. And Ejuke, it landed right in front of the ball. He was on the run-up, but he wasn't disturbed by that. And yes, he converts. And then I thought, Balikwisha, that's a really tough position that you're on. But no, it was not. And then Ajayi sees his penalty saved, and Mbemba, who already scored the winner against Cameroon, sends the DRC through to the Intercontinental playoff, where most likely they will be a seeded team. So they are only 1 match away from the World Cup. It will be the first time the DRC will be at the World Cup since 1974, when they were still called Zaire, and remember that was a rather ill-fated World Cup overall. And then we have to go to the evening games in Europe. 2 4-1 wins. We're not talking about Israel 4, Moldavia 1. No, Italy 1, Norway 4. I saw that I'm an optimist. For the simple reason that I knew Italy needed a 9-0 win. Never gonna happen, I knew that. However, when Esposito made it 1-0 after 10 minutes, I quickly thought, only 8, and yes, there's 80 more minutes to play. So if you score in a 10-minute rhythm, this might happen. And I have to say, Italy actually had that game weirdly, I don't want to say under control, but they were definitely the more proactive team, and Norway looked a little bit nervous. I don't know what was quite happening with Norway, but I thought this is actually a decent Italy performance in the first half. Well, that didn't last long. As soon as Nusa made it 1-1 at 63rd minute, this game was only going one way, and then Haaland adds 2 in very short succession, 78th and 79th, and Italy were done. And the defending on these goals was just ridiculous. It's not even worthy of the Italian jersey. I gotta say that much. And then, yes, Larsen adds 1 in garbage time, which then completes the biggest home loss for Italy since 1955, and never have they conceded as many goals in a qualifying match. Never have Italy even lost 2 matches in a World Cup qualifying campaign. So this is an absolute nadir for Italy. And yeah, the questions have to be asked. And I'm going to ask these questions from Italy, because this is not a one-off. This is the culmination of a development that we saw the latest in 2016, once Conte left. Conte's Italy squad at those Euros 10 years ago vastly overperformed. This was not a great Italy team. And we already had this in 2014 at the World Cup, a bad performance. But there were always enough results that could overshadow it. The change should have happened. And in a way it did happen after they didn't qualify for Russia. This was a disaster. Also due to a playoff format that, maybe didn't really favor Italy in a way. You had the tough draw being in a group with Spain, blah, blah, blah. This was the luck of the draw. This can happen. Yeah, they did the right thing. They hired Mancini. They actually won the Euros. And I think, as great as this day was, this is still one of the best days that I had as being not only an Italy fan, but since I'm watching international football. Because finally I could enjoy a win without, having a cloud of Zidane being sent off or anything like that there. This was great. However, it also felt in a way not sustainable, because this was built on the leadership of Bonucci and Chiellini. And who was not there. But this is a larger rot in Italy, because, yes, after this high, and Italy should have qualified for Qatar 22. 2 penalties missed. 2 penalties missed, and the whole situation is different. Yes, did not go all the way, and the one against North Macedonia also But you cannot excuse yourself with these little things. There is an institutional rot in Italy. And for me, the biggest rot is, it's not that there are no talents in Italy. And yes, it's not the great Italy that I had, let's say, 20 years ago. Even that World Cup winning team was a great team, but I didn't feel the individuals are as great. But this was kind of the last gasp. There were some great names in there. 30 years ago, look at the Italy squad then. I mean, those were players. Those were world-class players on every position, not only defense, but also midfield and in attack. The attack has been falling away for Italy. The midfield creativity is there in bits and pieces, and don't get me started on the lack of defending. I also find a true lack of leadership in this Italy squad. The leadership for Bonucci, Chiellini, this is what Italy need. Even though those two players are nothing like the Cannavaros, the Maldinis, the Nestors, the Baresis, and we can go even further. I don't think those players do compare to those huge icons that Italy used to have. But at least they had the grit and the leadership. Completely absent in this Italy team. And you can go now after Gattuso as a coach. And yes, Gattuso is maybe a great coach to tie a group together. But I don't think this works necessarily on a national team context, especially when it is players that do not respond to that very well. So there is one thing. And all his complaining during the Norway match, when Italy was still in the lead, kind of also then caused everyone in the Italy team to do the same. And then the shirt suddenly weighs heavy because players that perform well usually in the league of like Barella or Bastoni, who are probably two of the better players or could be the leaders in this Italy team, they're not working. But another thing that I know is, and that's why it's institutional, that Italian talents at the youth tournaments, Italians do perform really well. But no one gives them a chance in Serie A. It is just a madness, this league. And then I always think that the Italy national team is doing best. And believe me, as a Milan fan, this hurts me to say, but is doing best when Juventus is great. Because Juventus is the core. Juventus are a mess. There are barely any Italians there. Milan is doing the same thing. So it's only Inter players. But if the three big teams in Italy could actually build an Italian core, without having now this pressure of, we gotta win, and we gotta win now. That's the only way for Italy out. It's the big clubs that need to step up and give Italian talent a chance. Inter have done it to a degree. Milan potentially are trying to do it again. As for Juventus, not so certain. And we can say, as always, the rot starts at the top. And that's the federation that is only there with people that try to preserve power instead of really moving forward. No one in Italy has an interest of ripping up the playbook as they did in Germany in the early 2000s. I wish it was happening, but this is not the Italy that I fell in love with anymore. This is an Italy team where I actually think that might be still in the top 10 in Europe, but with performances like this and an attitude like this, have nothing to do with the World Cup. And I honestly gotta say, the reason why I think Gattuso should be let go is just his comments ahead of this window, when he kind of said he had this qualifying. In my time, the top 2 qualified for a World Cup, but now we give 10 spots to Africa. I am sorry. This is excuse seeking, and this is not what the coach of the Nazionale should say. Italy can do much better. And it's not only the jerseys. That's also for me a sign. When Italy have great jerseys, and Adidas will not produce a great Italy jersey, Italy is better. So yeah, those are my thoughts from a fan of the Azzurri since my childhood. Even though I'm Austrian, it really, really hurts seeing Italy like this. But until they clean the mess up, there will be no World Cup for Italy, even in an expanded format. And they might still qualify. But do you really think they will make it past a round of 16 at most? No, and that's also not Italy. Unlike Italy, Germany do not stumble on a Monday that was overall more meh than actually exciting. But what Germany showed, this is what Germany should show. It's scary when Germany gets rolling. And I have to say now, with these new jerseys, it reminded me a little bit of the Germany of the 90s. And I have to say, the thick Adidas stripe on the Germany kit actually don't bother me all that much. That kit looks much better than I initially thought it would. But yeah, scary Germany. I mean, they put pressure on Slovakia from the beginning in Leipzig. Then a Kimmich cross in 18th minute and Voldemar, they heads it in. And there was only one way. Slovakia completely collapsing. The 29th, Goretzka finds Gnabry 2-0, and then Florian Wirtz twice assists Leroy Sané, and ahead of the halftime it's 4-0 for Germany against Slovakia, and what should have been billed as a great finale never was won. Slovakia conceded 2 more by Ridley Baku and Wedraogo, so there goes Slovakia in a way, who at least have a playoff spot, but that was a very nothing performance by them. Germany still qualify for every World Cup campaign that they have entered. That's also a great record, and this is what a great footballing nation does, looking at you in the south. At the same time, Northern Ireland finished their campaign with a 1-0 over Luxembourg. I think Luxembourg have lost every single game. Also kind of a little bit disappointed because I thought Luxembourg are getting somewhere. Poland were 2-1 down at Malta, a Malta team that beat Finland, but then win it 3-2. They're also going into the playoff because the Netherlands, of course, get the win against Lithuania, and even the 4-0 would not have been enough for Poland, I would think. And Reinders opens the score in the 16th minute for the Dutch. Then, they just keep it, but don't score a whole lot. But then it's a penalty, it's given away. VAR looks at it, Gakpo, it was a clear handball. Converts in the 58th minute, Xavi Simons 2 minutes later makes it 3, and then 2 minutes later Daniel Malen makes it 4. And at that point I thought, will the Dutch get a bigger scoreline against Lithuania than Germany will get against Slovakia? Actually, should be. No, never was. The Dutch just then stopped more or less playing. There were even some chances for Lithuania in there. Horrible jersey matchup, I gotta say. The orange against green does not look good. The other matches then, the Czechs finished their qualifying campaign with a 6-0 over Gibraltar. However, we already knew that they are going into the playoff. And Croatia, I think we're 2-1 down at Montenegro, but win it 3-2 with a B team more or less. But also through to the World Cup already. Boy, and what a great finale on Tuesday. It was really nervy Tuesday, not only for me, but for many fans around the world, many fans that were still involved, and where World Cup qualification was not yet quite secured. And it started actually down in Asia, in Basra, between Iraq and the UAE. What a final that was for the final Intercontinental playoff, the Asian spot between those two. First leg was 1-1. The UAE actually take a lead, but halfway through the second half, goal-ahead goal came also in the first half, we got an equalizer, and then the game ebbed and flowed. The UAE thought they had the winning goal already, but it was an offside, and that came on the back of a one-on-one with the goalie on Iraq's side. So it was really up and down, nervy. I have to say the atmosphere there was absolutely amazing, and the stadium actually surprised me. What a great stadium they actually have there. So I really pleased with everything there. And then the drama, it was a 10-minute stoppage time, and in the 9th or the 10th minute of said stoppage time, a ball hit the UAE defender on the arm, and it's a penalty. And just get the highlights and see the reactions around that one. I mean, the UAE didn't want to believe it. This was just unfathomable for them. But in the end, it's the penalty that is slotted home, and Iraq are through to the Intercontinental playoffs, where, with other results falling their way, they are actually seeded. So they are only one step away from making it all the way back to the World Cup for the first time, I think, since 1986. But I gotta be honest, to me it was all about Austria, Bosnia, and it is not usual that I'm only watching one single game, but I have to tell you, I was so nervous, I was so focused on that game, and yes, while I was positive that Austria gonna do that, the closer it came to kick off, the more of a wreck I became, because, as of late, games against such opponents from former Yugoslavia have not gone our way. It was usually 1-1 draws. And it again was a 1-1 draw. I don't want to say lucky, but a hard-worked 1-1 draw. But I knew also that this time around a 1-1 draw is enough. Although you would have wanted the win. But I also didn't want this decider game because I knew there will be plenty of Bosnian fans on the ground. This is not the home game that Austria usually have against teams like from the former Yugoslav state and, of course, Turkey. You never have a pure home game. That is the reality of it. And so I knew this is going to be nervy. And, you also have to see it from the Bosnian side of view. For both of these teams, this was the best chance of qualifying for the World Cup. The playoffs are not the best chance. This was the best chance for either of these two teams for qualifying for the World Cup. And so the nerves were high. And, there have been results, let's put it that way, ever since we got eliminated by Turkey at the Euros, where exactly these decisive games have not gone Austria's way. And this started to weigh heavy, even though I knew by every metric Austria are the better team. There's no way we're not going to qualify. Well, you started with possession and had some half chances. It was of course Bosnia who took the lead with the first chance, and it was a needless corner kick that Lima, if there's better communication, seemingly was too loud. Lima doesn't play this into a corner. The corner is okay, cleared by Schlager, but it's the defenders that then really follow the ball and completely don't count that. You have to mark Tabakovic or Dzeko for that matter. And Tabakovic gets his head on it. And after 12 minutes, it's 1-0 for Bosnia. And Tabakovic, he became kind of a hero at Austria Vienna. He played long time in the second division in Austria. He's now in Germany. So I wonder how that must have felt for him. But it was a huge goal for Bosnia. And then you could really feel there are so many Bosnians in the stadium. I mean, that was more than a third. That was more of a third of the spectators were of Bosnian descent. Fortunately, except for all the bengalos going off, there was not the really nasty atmosphere that we had the last time that these two met. I think it was a whole lot more friendly, I want to say, at least from what I say. But this shocked Austria. And the game plodded then a little bit. Bosnia knew Austria liked to play it fast. So what do? We sit deep, we give them a ball, and Austria played slow. And it took right around the 35th minute until Austria finally had a chance. And I was so annoyed at Arnautovic, who very often, with back heels tried to get an attack going. It's not the time for back heels. It really isn't. But there was a good chance that Arnautovic, I think with a back heel or something like that, actually gave to Seiwald, who took the shot, was too central. Then there was from too acute of an angle a shot by Sabitzer, where, if you put it in the center, there would have been an Arnautovic and others as well. So, going for the glory instead of looking at somebody. And then finally you get the breakthrough. Lima wins the ball in his own half, plays it forward, and then Arnautovic sends him, and Lima, nice shot, slight touch by the goalie, but wide inside of the post. It goes in the net. It's 1-1. Everyone fought. Because for some reason, the way that Lima won the ball was seen as a foul. I cannot say I went berserk on that one. You cannot take this away. This was never a foul. And yes, I'm an Austrian, but even from a non-Austrian point of view, this is not the type of things that I want to see given as a foul. Yes, there's contact there. But the Bosnian fan is running into Lima. Yes, he makes a step forward, and yes, his legs are between the legs of the Bosnian, and maybe that's what did it. Still, no. I was so annoyed because you thought it is 1-1, and now you go with the momentum into halftime and you can go for the win. No, it became nerve-wracking, and early on Bosnia even had probably a chance. Tabakovic couldn't get his feet sorted, and then they were sitting deep. I mean, this was a block in the middle and they defended well. And whatever I'm saying now, always have in mind, Bosnia played their hearts out here. They knew this is their best chance and that's how they played. And Austria had no idea. I mean, Sabitzer's crosses, they couldn't clear the first man. Most of the time it just went in and it was headed out again. It was also through the middle a little bit more chance, but there were so many Bosnians that you always get caught up in that one. And over the right side there was not much happening. And I was sitting there after only 20 minutes to go and I think, oh man, this game I don't like one bit. I've seen this movie way too often. Meanwhile, Gregoric had come on, guy that I like, and then for the first time a Sabitzer cross, not with his left foot from the left side, but with his right foot. So it's going towards goal, not away from goal. And there's Arnautovic, and seemingly he got on there, but no, he didn't. The ball bounces off the crossbar, goes down. There are seemingly only Bosnian defenders. Arnautovic is on the floor. The goalie is also unsorted because he's lying on the floor, gets his hand on it. And then who is there? Gregoric, who had just come on, and you can see he just wills it in. I mean, with so much thunder, puts it into the net for a second. Really, for a second, I thought that Arnautovic might have been judged offside, and it would have been tough, but he is officially offside. But since the goal is also lying there, I guess that's why it was not an offside. The goal counts. It's the goal that sends Austria to the World Cup. What follows then thereafter? There was a situation where I thought there might have been a handball in the Austrian box. Fortunately, it wasn't, and the Bosnians didn't even complain. And from that moment on, then Gregoric again had the chance, running more or less alone to goal, but he's too slow and cannot even really get the shot of it. It's blocked. And that was the other chance that Austria had. They were defending them valiantly. I mean, there was only a very short period in stoppage time where I thought that Bosnia, for about a minute, were in the Austrian. Otherwise, it was Austria pressing high, blocking it away. Bong, 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 bong. The only thing that I have to say afterwards, we wanted to win this one. But if you have a corner in the 85th minute, and you play it short with two men there trying to kill off the time, you cannot convince me that you were about to try to win this game. And it actually annoyed me also a little bit. But, I don't care. And yes, with this win, most likely Austria will be drawn out of pot 3 unless FIFA decides that all the playoff winners will go into the 4th pot. But other than that, Austria will be in the 3rd pot, be it as it may. Most important, the wait is over. The wait is over, and this was the closest that Austria were to a World Cup since 2002 when we lost against Turkey 6-0 in aggregate. So this has been a long time in the making, and yes, you were in pot 1 for that draw. You got a really nice group, at least from the opponents. You could say you're better than every other team in there, and yes, every team in there knew how to stand deep and give trouble to Austria. I admit that. But this was a group that you just had to win, and you got it over the line. And that is outstanding also. And it shows how this team is holding together, and the team spirit is really, really high. You could see everyone was happy for everybody else. This was a true unit that Ralf Rangnick has formed. And I don't think they need to go into the World Cup and think much about what can happen. I think all the pressure is off. Now it is about to enjoy, and I guess the positive is that probably, and we have to talk about the draw when the draw happens, but most likely most opponents that are not European ones will not know how to play Austria. That has me slightly positive for that, but I'm getting way ahead of myself. For now, Austria back at the World Cup. And what made me truly happy, and please, Danish fans, nothing against you, but what made me truly happy, thanks to connections, especially through my buddy Andy, but also work colleagues. Scotland also ended their drought. Both Austria and Scotland haven't qualified for a World Cup since '98. The only thing that could have made that even better is if Bulgaria also would have qualified, but they were never in the running. I actually would have loved that too. Also, Bulgaria since '98 was not at the World Cup, but there the chances were much less. I did not watch the Scotland game. I followed the scores. And when Austria made it 1-1, I saw that Scotland had it made 2-1, and I was happy. Then I see 2-2. And then I just, I'm watching the final minutes for Austria game. I had only the phone. I didn't want to start the game. I didn't want to jinx it. And then I see 3-2 and 4-2, and it goes forever. And I was elated. Honestly, I had to go to sleep relatively soon afterwards. I had to calm myself down. My heart was pumping even 1 hour after kickoff, it seems like. I think I fell asleep sooner than that. But I really need to calm myself down. And then I saw in the morning the highlights. And boy, I already saw how the match went. And given that the Austria game was already nervy enough, because there was nothing. There was too much happening. This was a roller coaster ride. If you're a Scotland fan, if you're a Denmark fan, I don't care. And then McTominay scoring a bicycle kick goal in a decisive match. Has there ever been somebody that had a bigger career revival in Serie A than Scott McTominay? Probably there has been, but absolutely amazing, amazing stuff. He goes to Naples, suddenly he's a god there, wills them to a championship, and now he also I don't want to say he carries Scotland, but he is a vital part of getting Scotland to the World Cup with a bicycle goal. One of the best goals you ever see, and there was not even hype. It was too much separated. There was no hype boot for me. Yes, Denmark, they were pressing. However, the penalty that Denmark got, I mean, sorry, soft. Extremely soft penalty. It's the other Napoli guy, Rasmus Højlund, who gets the equalizer. However, Denmark gets an man sent off. That was also soft. It's kind of a little bit makeup for the penalty. I honestly think this could have been go on as well. But this actually wasn't a big chance for Scotland. And then it's a corner kick in that Shankland gets his head just a little bit in. It would have been probably gone in anyway. And it's 2-1 Scotland. I think in minute 78. Hampden is roaring, and then just 4 minutes later, Dorgo makes it 2-2 before Tierney. I mean, and there was a pretty good chance before that as well, but then Tierney more or less passes, curls, however you want, in the back of the net from the edge of the box to give Scotland the lead in the 93rd minute. And then there's more and more and more time added on before it's a goal from midfield that sees Scotland clinch the spot. 4-2. That had all the vibes from Patrick Schick in there as well. So great goals for Scotland. I have to say I'm almost as happy for Scotland that I am for Austria, and it really rounded off a great day. The other results, I don't care to tell you that much. My only slight disappointment was that Spain only played a 2-2 draw against Turkey. I wanted Spain to play the perfect qualification, but maybe, it's just not really realistic. Bulgaria got their first win, a 2-1 over Georgia, so, at least some hope. I really hope Bulgaria will get their act together. And we had Belgium clinching the World Cup spot with a 7-0 over Liechtenstein, and Wales roar into the second place. 7-1 over North Macedonia. But North Macedonia is also in. However, they could face Italy. That was previous. And then to top it all off, the last day of Concacaf qualifying. You may have followed my channel. Concacaf teams, of course, I have the host nations in my collection. And, I had Costa Rica from the last World Cup, but I tried to add on. I got Honduras and I got Jamaica, and I was hoping that those two will make it to the World Cup. No, none of them will make it. None of the non-host teams that I have in my collection didn't make it. So if you're watching this YouTube, I did not change the background on that, although Jamaica at least still have a chance. But what a crazy match day, and what crazy qualification routes we have. I mean, we only got one non-surprise. Panama win it 3-0 at home to El Salvador, and Lask's on Andres Andrade is qualified for the World Cup. So at least one Lask player will be at the World Cup, of course, unless he's injured. So that was happy. Suriname lose 3-1 at Guatemala. That came a little bit surprising. So Suriname are out, but with the 3-0, the chances were anyway good for Panama to qualify overall. But then the other two groups. Curaçao managed to get a 0-0 draw against Jamaica that was also reduced to 10 men. Curaçao at the World Cup. And they are just about level, and probably even the smallest ever nation to qualify for the World Cup ever since Iceland did in 2018. Curaçao. I mean, honestly, I could imagine a whole range of teams from CONCACAF qualifying. Curaçao was not one of them. At the Gold Cup, they were never anywhere. How are they at the World Cup? I mean, crazy stuff. Jamaica only in second place, meaning they have to go to the Intercontinental playoff. And then to top it all off, Honduras managed a 0-0 draw against Costa Rica. Costa Rica also reduced to 10 men, and this for me is a major storyline in CONCACAF. Costa Rica is a powerhouse. I mean, they should be number 3 overall behind Mexico and the United States with all the pedigree that they have achieved. They only finished this group in 3rd place. And the 0 is not enough for Honduras either, as Haiti win 2-0 against Nicaragua and win the group. Haiti have done some noise at the Gold Cup. At least that. But it's also a nation where I expected anything but qualification. Not as big as Curaçao, but absolutely crazy that these two nations, Curaçao and Haiti, are at the World Cup. Bravo. Jamaica and Suriname are in the Intercontinental playoff where they cannot play each other. But one will play against New Caledonia. That is probably a win. The other one will play against Bolivia. That's going to be a little bit harder. And then, you play either Iraq or the DRC. Okay, so 42 of the 48 teams at the World Cup we know now. There are only 6 left. They're all decided via playoff spots. 4 more for Europe, 2 via the Intercontinental playoff that I explained towards the end. I had not made the graphics yet if you have watched this on YouTube. But I think you could follow that one. So now I just want to give you the procedure for the playoff draw for European playoffs. We have the 12 runners-up from each group who will be ranked according to the new FIFA ranking. I did a little bit projections and so on, looked it up on the internet, so I tried to get these out, but it was pretty much clear from the get-go. And these will be then augmented by the 4 best group winners from the Nations League campaign that did not qualify for the World Cup. And those were all the League C group winners, curiously enough. So, the draw will go now as follows. Teams from 1 through 8 in the rank will have a home game in the semi-final, where teams from 1 through 4, meaning Italy, Denmark, Turkey and Ukraine, those are the top seeds, they will have a home game against either Sweden, Romania, North Macedonia and Northern Ireland. By FIFA ranking, this is a little bit odd, I gotta say, because you wanna you want to reward the group winners, but then you give them potentially with Sweden and Romania 2 teams that should not be in the top pot down there. Be it as it may, this is what's going to happen. I'm not going to say anything personally now who would I prefer for Italy, because whoever they will get, they anyway going to fail. Then Poland, Wales, Czechia and Slovakia will play either one of Ireland, Albania, Bosnia and the Kosovo. Then the winners of the semi-finals that involve the teams in 1-3 through 4 will be drawn against the winners of the semi-finals involving the teams from spots 5 to 8. However, there is no home field advantage necessarily for 1 through 4. This will be decided via the draw. So while 1 through 8 will have home field advantage for sure, 1 through 4 will not have an automatic home field advantage in the final, which I think is a flaw in the system, to be honest. I think if you rank that high, you should be given the home field advantage, and it should be whoever has the higher FIFA ranking should actually then go and have a home game. But it is what it is. It will be exciting. It might not be pretty to watch. I will make a reaction pod on that. Plus, I have another topic ahead of the World Cup draw that I actually would like to address. So I have planned this for a Friday episode. Whole lot of episodes this week, but I think that will be worth it. I just can say, yes, I'm not happy about Italy, but we knew that Italy is not gonna qualify, and the Italians only can look at themselves for this one, and change needs to happen. I wanna say, because maybe it got a little bit lost, Norway is a really good team. And it's a team that's bigger than the sum of their parts, and that involves an Ødegaard and a Haaland and a surreal. Still not sure if they are absolutely a great team, but they are a team that no one will want to play. That much I can also tell. So for me, Norway is probably the biggest story. And even though England didn't concede, Norway played as perfect a qualification campaign and scored goals by the shitload. So just wanted to have said that. For me, Norway are the winners of World Cup qualifying, at least from the European zone. And yes, it's very Eurocentric. I also have to say, whatever happened in Africa, whatever happened in Concacaf, but even the Asian final for the playoff spot, madness. World Cup qualifying at its best, but still the format, I think, needs to be revised. But we'll talk about this already last time around. Be it as it may, let me know your thoughts. How did your team fare on this final match day? Were they already through? Did they need to worry a little bit? Was it nervy? All I can say is it was enjoyable to watch, even though I did not enjoy that Austria game at all. But be it as it may, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this episode. Leave me a subscription. Tell somebody else about this podcast. And I'll talk to you soon about more things in my soccer universe. Bye.